We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every man is to go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan liberty for all. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is February 10th, 2016, and we are coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you for tuning in. We're on weeknights, Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and you can listen live on Spreaker.com and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And you can listen to the archives on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud, Tumblr, the TUMBLR, because I thought there was a Tumblr that had an ER. But anyway, you can listen to them there immediately after the show. The best place to listen is YouTube, because then I get like a penny or something out of it. I have 22 cents so far. So we promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, as well as exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. So it is 4 days before Valentine's Day. I don't know how many people out there are excited about Valentine's Day, depressed about Valentine's Day, or just don't give a fuck. I remember, of course, when I didn't have a girlfriend and Valentine's Day would come up, it's like, whatever, who cares? You suckers buying people shit for Valentine's Day. And I don't know. It's kind of like, when I didn't have a girlfriend, I would be that person that would not make fun of people having girlfriends, but like, oh yeah, you can't go out because you gotta go, with your girlfriend, whatever, and she tells you what to do, and then of course when I did, I'd always be with my girlfriend because that's like the type of person that I am. But I would just fuck around with other people anyway. So Valentine's Day is the 14th, which is on a Sunday this year. I know I'm going to a fundraiser for Annette Tahiro, who's running for U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives, District 3, which is my district. I said it like that because yesterday I had them mixed up. I had her running for 3 last year and running for 1 this year, and it was the other way around, and I knew that she was running for mine this year. And last year she ran in a mostly, I guess, Democratic area, and this year the district is, I guess, more balanced, and the former representative who is now running for the Senate to become a nice career politician after being a doctor, Annette is also a doctor, but I don't know what her plans are long term. The Senate, of course, the House of Representatives, of course, is only 2 years. The Senate is 6, and it's more important, obviously, because you have 100 people in the Senate compared to 435. So I guess he wants to move. I guess it's like a promotion, right? From you're voted in a promotion. Of course, I don't believe in government, so it doesn't really make a fucking difference to me, although Annette is a friend, so I hope that she wins. But I don't think, especially being one out of 135 in the House of Representatives, that she can make much of a difference. I hope she can make a difference and hopefully get some bills repealed and maybe go out there and say, hey, what I was saying yesterday, that why don't we start judging people on how many bills they repeal, and why don't they pass a bill that says, okay, we can only have a certain amount of bills or a certain amount of laws because this is getting ridiculous. And if you've ever looked at like their schedule for the day when Congress is in session, it's like stupid shit too. Like a bill, there'll be a bill that will say the bill to name this park after former President Hoover, or I don't think they'd be naming anything after Hoover except, of course, vacuum cleaners. But it's stuff like that, along with, you think like every day there's some big important bill, but there's really not. There's a website for people that actually want to follow, and I should follow more what's going on just in the Senate and the House of Representatives in Congress, which I was, just so I can come out and say, look at what they're trying to do. And I was paying a lot of attention to that, but I kind of got away from all of that stuff because I don't see it as a way to change things. I don't see taking this bill and going around telling people to call their congressperson is going to make a fucking difference. I don't, and I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but I talk about it all the time, that I believe that the point that things are at now, and I think always, because I think government, the definition of government, which I probably mention at least once a show, has to do with control and ruling over people and ruling over their lives. It was funny because today there was an interview with the Bush. Which Bush is he? Jeb, the Bush running for president. The Bush. I do like me a nice Bush. I'm like cracking myself up. I'm sorry. But he said that the people, I wrote it down. People are looking to them to fix, they need to fix problems for people. And like, really? I'm looking to the president to fix problems for me. No, I'm looking to myself to fix problems for me. Or if it comes down to it, if it's like money or something, maybe my mom. But I'm not looking for the president or anybody in government to fix any problems for me at all. Most likely, I'm looking to myself, and then, like I said, if worst case scenario, I'm looking to family or my fiance or a friend or something like that, which real friends are hard to come by. And we'll actually talk a little about that today, as today we're going to talk about a couple different things. And initially, I was just going to talk about ISIS and how the Republicans are focusing on security. That's their big thing. And most people, I think, could give a fuck about ISIS and all of that shit. They're more worried about a job or money or where they're going to live at, or things that have nothing to do with that, and things that really have nothing to do with government. government always wants to get involved. And when it comes to where you're going to live or getting jobs, to me, government has no role in creating jobs. And again, this is assuming that you believe in government and there is a government. And there actually is a government right now, unfortunately. But government has no role in creating jobs as far as I'm concerned. They have their only role, again, with the assumption that you believe in government, is to create an environment that doesn't hinder other people from creating jobs. So meaning that if they're passing all these regulations and it's stopping businesses from being able to function or open or make money, if they're passing all these laws like that, then that's obviously a problem. But that's their only, in my opinion, of course. I mean, it's an opinion show, so everything is my opinion. But that's their only role when it comes to jobs. It's really just get the fuck out the way. And really at this point, I think it's go back and get rid of these bills. It came up yesterday, so it's in my mind, but I can't get over. And like I said, the government doesn't know. We have, if you count from 1776, 240 years of laws, and actually, if you count from the actual Constitution, I believe was 1781. So. You would have like 235 years, whatever, close enough. But you look at that. Now, I'm sure in the first 20 years or 50 years that there were a lot less bills passed, I would think. But I'm just assuming maybe there were more because you had the beginning of a country and maybe they thought, okay, we need to start passing all this stuff. I don't know. I know now I'm thankful that they take a lot of time off and go out and golf and all this shit. People complain about it. And it's kind of funny. Like, people complain, look at all the time they take off and they're not doing this and they're not governing. Well, you know what they're doing when they're not taking time off? They're passing more laws. They're spending more money. They're doing all this stuff. So the more vacation they take, as far as I'm concerned, is fine with me. They could take half a year. So like in Nevada, and this is something I forgot about, but I would have mentioned if I had thought of it when I go through Las Vegas and the state of Nevada, that their legislature is only in session every other year. And that is a good thing because you have a whole year that nothing is getting passed. I mean, the governor is always around, I guess. I don't know how you'd classify that, but he's always on duty, I guess, or working. Well, I don't know that he's always working, but as far as Congress, I mean, they go home. It's not in session. It's just every other year. So that's a positive thing because you have that whole year. And some states, I mean, and it's not even the whole year. I think it's like 4 months out of the year. But then you look at other places and it's a full-time job where they're in session just as much as Washington, D.C. You'd think it would be the other way around, that the state, which should have more power over that state than the federal government, would be in session more often, but that's not the case. The federal government is pretty much not all the time. I know they take like a big vacation between November and January, and but I mean it's like it's pretty close to a full-time job. I don't know their exact schedule. I know they have a break, but it's not like a huge break like it is, say, in the state of Nevada, where I believe it's 4 months and then they're done. And they're done for a year and a half, which is, again, a positive thing. So the less laws, the better, unless it's laws that are repealing other laws, which I don't consider laws, because you're getting rid of a repeal of a law is getting rid of a law. So I wouldn't call that a law, repealing a law. That's a whole big long thing with laws and repealing laws. But anyway, tonight, I don't know how I got into that. I was just going to talk about ISIS and how they're focusing on that as the most important thing. Ted Cruz actually said tonight that is the most important thing. That is the biggest issue in the election, is keeping people safe. Mainly from ISIS, which is crazy, and we'll go into why. So initially, I was just going to talk about that. We've talked about ISIS in the past, so I didn't think, and we've talked a lot about the debates and the presidential election, and that was stuff that honestly I didn't even want to go into. I had mentioned I first went into that because of Shire Dude wanted to do a show on somebody, or I don't know if I don't remember specifically, but we ended up doing a show of the attraction to Trump and Bernie Sanders. And I had one show I did on Bernie Sanders, but that was not really about Bernie Sanders. It was more about democratic socialism and using him as that example there and the attraction. So after that, I kind of just got into it because it seemed like something that people want to hear about, and everybody's talking about it. So I like to cover things that aren't being talked about in government media, to get the news out there and stuff out there that people aren't talking about, like the police killing, multiple people every day and killing unarmed people and things like that. And that's something we haven't really talked about in a while, as far as them doing that. But it felt like getting into the same thing where we were just reciting the same thing over and over again, and it was different, but I mean it was the same. It was, and it still is. It's police just killing people, police violating people's rights, and all of that stuff. And it seems that the media seemed to have forgotten. Now, of course, I do have a show scheduled where we'll talk about the police and get more into other things that the police do besides killing, because what happens from that as well is everything got focused on police murdering people, and if they didn't murder somebody, it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. Well, it's not a big deal that they beat this person, or that they harassed this person, or arrested them for something that's not a crime, or whatever they did to that person is not cared about or focused on, or it doesn't really make a difference, because you have cops murdering 1,100, 1,200 people every year. So because you have that, it's like, well, what about the person, like my story where I had huge bruises all over me from getting ripped out of my car. So compared to getting murdered, I mean, obviously that's not a big deal, but it's still something that shouldn't happen. So what it does, and people have talked about this, it's conditioned people as well as like, oh, you just got, harassed. Oh, that's not a big deal. Or you just got beat up, or you got hurt a little. That's not a big deal. You had a cop try to strangle you through the window. I've had that happen to me. That's not a big deal. But of course, that was in like 1993. So I don't know if it would have been a big deal if we were to do anything about it. But there really wasn't anything we could have done about it. Essentially, I was under 18. I was still in high school, and my father called the police station the next day, and he was yelling at them and said, well, is it proper procedure to for an officer to put their hand through the window and try to strangle somebody? And they're like, I don't know, sir. It depends on exactly what happened. And nothing would have came out of that, even though I had, 5 people in the car, I think. So 5 witnesses. I think everybody was black. So they would have said, oh, they're liars. They would have said they're liars anyway, because they would have said that they're friends of mine. So, of course, they're going to back up the story. But why would you make something like that up? But I don't think anything would have happened anyway. So that's pretty much how it goes. But anyway, tonight we're going to talk about ISIS and how the Republicans especially, the Democrats are paying attention to them, but they're not the main focus. And the Democrats now, there's only 2 of them. I guess Vermin Supreme got 4% of the Democratic vote in the New Hampshire primary. But I don't know if we're really counting him. But as far as what the people that are on the ballot that have a chance of winning that are in the debates, it's just Hillary and Mr. Bernie Sanders. That's funny. That's what they actually call my grandmother, Bernie, because she's Bernice. I don't know what Bernie Sanders' name, if his name is Bernard and they call him Bernie, or he's actually Bernie. Anyway, Bert and Ernie. If they combined Bert and Ernie, they'd be Bernie. Because Bert and Ernie, and yeah. So anyway, we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Las Vegas and the level of freedom and all of the positives and negatives compared to other places in the country. And I know we've talked a little about that before, but I'm going to get into some more detail regarding Las Vegas. And of course, one of the things that I would look at as a positive, however, I haven't done a lot of research in other states or looked at other states. There's probably like a spreadsheet or something like that that lists this state, that lists every state and then how often they're in session. That'd be interesting to look at, because like I said, every state's different. But I know there are plenty of states that are all year round. I mean, they're like the federal government where they have those breaks in between. And speaking of the federal government, I was looking at some statistics, and I have now a huge amount of listens, like out of nowhere, that say other. So in Spreaker, it will tell me where the listen came from, like if it came from my website or it came from YouTube, or if it's connected, meaning that if there's some link between Spreaker and where it was posted. So like for YouTube, I have it set up where it automatically posts to YouTube. Those stats are, which is weird, only updated every 48 hours. But so I would know. But there's other, which could be the Tumblr thing, Tumblr with no E. So what would you call that? Tumblr or something? I don't know. Anyway, so you have that. But like in the past week, and I think this is only from, I'm thinking the 8th. It was the 8th was the day where I had all the others. But in the past week, I had like 90-something% of listens coming from, now I don't know if it goes a whole week or if it just went a day. So it could have just been counting Monday, because I did a show this Monday, because that was the day where it had that huge amount of the source being other. But I had like 90-something% from that week from a part of the municipal Washington, D.C. area. So it makes me think, like, if they went back, if the government went back and got every show I ever did to go through it, then that would explain why I have all these listeners in that area all of a sudden. Now, in that same town is, I think, George Mason University, and I think there's another university. So it's possible, I guess, that somehow somebody at a university got a hold of something and listened to it. I don't know that would be, that's not my number one demographic, I guess. I think 25 to, 34? Like 98% of my listeners are 25 to 34, which is, I think, probably the best to have, although it cuts some people out on both sides. You know, people under 25 would be good to have, and of course, people over 34, it would be good to have as well. But that's my main, I guess. That's not my target, but I mean, that's just the people that happen to listen based on those Spreaker statistics. And then, of course, there's the YouTube statistics as well, which I should look at those. But now I have that whole thing. Is the FBI or something, or some government agency over there listening or pulling all my shows, like, to listen? Who knows, man? I don't give a fuck. I don't say anything illegal, and well, you never know now what's legal and what's not. And although you should, according to the law, you're supposed to know every law, even though the government and the police, and they've ruled that the police don't have to know the law, but you have to know the law. It's a real crazy thing. And that's why, based on that, I think there should be an amount, as I was saying, like a salary cap in football, but you never change it. It's like, okay, we cap it out at this. So you want to pass this law, motherfucker, you better go and find a law to get rid of to pass this law. And, you know, basically there shouldn't be I don't really think there should be many or any laws at all except natural law. And we all know that's why they had that saying that the no excuse, there's not saying, but it's actually a law as well, I guess, that there's no not knowing the law is, there's an actual saying, but I don't remember exactly how it goes, but not knowing the law you can't be used as an excuse. So, but it sounds better the way it's actually supposed to be told. But that came from everything being natural law, because everybody knew, like, all right, you don't steal from people, you don't kill people, you don't assault people. People knew that you just don't violate other people's rights and freedoms. So you didn't need laws for that. And, I know what it is. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. That's, I think, the actual saying. So I wanted to make sure I had that right there. So anyway, I was just going to do, I'm getting back into my prior conversation. I was just going to talk about ISIS and how far they're going with that, but we've talked about ISIS before, and I felt we should talk about something else as well. So we're kind of doing two main topics today, as opposed to just one that we usually do, and then I'll usually find some articles to talk about. So last night we started to talk a little about the New Hampshire primary. And just for those who don't know or don't care, which, I don't know. I don't care, but I know, and I kind of got to know if I'm going to, I guess, go through this. I don't know how much coverage I'm actually gonna give it throughout the campaign. We have the election, of course, is in November, but people seem to be interested. I think a lot of that is Trump, but Trump's just like trying to be entertaining, and you could tell he's trying to be entertaining for the sake of being entertaining. And I've already talked about, I did a show on him, but I got like over 100 listens, I think, on that show, because people want to listen to Trump, and I don't get it. I don't get the attraction to Trump, and I don't know that anybody's even listening to what the fuck Trump is saying, and we'll get into that when we talk about ISIS. But of course, yesterday he has this thing. He seems to be all about winning. Like, winning matters more. If you listen to his speeches, that winning matters more than actually becoming president or being in the best position. He's just happy that I won. And not only did I win, or I should do like a Trump won. And not only did Trump win, but Trump won by a huge percentage. He actually did. I think he got like 60%. No, that was Sanders that got 60%. I know Cruz got 12, and I think Kasich got in the less than 20, maybe 16. So maybe Trump got like 40. But, I mean, he did win by a sizable amount. So after that is South Carolina. And Chris Christie dropped out. So the stage does not have to be as heavy. But, and I guess they're, I'm sure they feed them before the debates, so they get to cut down on a lot of that food. So I don't know how much longer he has on his term for governor, because I'm pretty sure he just got elected, because I remember they were talking about, oh, well, he just got elected and he's going to run for president. But I don't remember if that was 2012 that he was considering it and he just got elected then, or he just had been elected like 2014. I'm not sure. And I don't know if some states have term limits on governors. So I don't know if he's out soon and what he would do after that. A lot of these people, I mean, there's so many different things to run for. It's like, even if you had term limits on everything, right, you'd be able to still be a career politician. So you have to have something where the cumulative running for office, like you'd have to count like all these things, like the state legislature and governor and anything in the federal government, because it wouldn't matter. So like right now there's no term limits in Congress, just president. And there wasn't any term limits under the president, for people who don't know, until after FDR, who is the only president who served more than 2 terms. He actually served 4, but not a full 4th term. And that's kind of scary that he could have been president for a lot longer. I don't know how old he was when he died, and that is not one of my favorite presidents. FDR, people don't know this, probably hated the Jews more than Hitler did, or at least just as much. He just didn't go around, I guess, executing people, but there was in his writings things that he had said, and I don't really, and of course I'm half Jewish, I guess, if you count being Jewish as a race, but if you count it solely as a religion, then I'm not Jewish because I don't believe in religion. But it doesn't really matter, because anybody who's anti-Jew would consider me a Jew and say bad things about me, or if they were fanatical Muslims, probably kill me. Speaking of that, I had one listen. Well, I don't know how many listens it is. It just gives me a percentage. It was 0.3 percentage points for, I don't know if I was looking at a month period or a week or what, but I had 0.3 percentage points from Islamabad, Pakistan. So that was kind of cool to see. I don't know why they'd be listening to the show, and it may be, I'm sure, because I have listens from other countries too, I'm sure they're just clicking through. So they might be on something like Spreaker and say, looking at political shows, and then just click on it and then listen for like a minute and then this sucks and turn it off. Because I don't know from Spreaker the amount of time. From YouTube, I do know the average time. But again, that's just the average time as well. So I don't know how long this person listened. But the fact that you can reach the whole world is, you don't really have anything to stop you. Of course, there's some countries that will block sites and things like that. So you do have that. But with the exception of that, is just the fact that, and you can buy applications that, block your server, or your IP address and make it look like you're in a different place. So you have that as well. So people can, IP cloaking can get that and listen from places where they block certain websites. But it's cool that I see, I didn't see a lot of other countries where there was a huge amount. I think there was one European country like England or Ireland or Scotland or something like that there was not that high of a percentage, but high enough. That was pretty cool. But to have somebody in Pakistan listen, and there's people, yes, of course, there's radical Muslims, but there's people that are just like everybody else. There's people in Islamabad, Pakistan, that are going to college and are living their lives, and hey, maybe they want to listen to some American radio and see what's going on here. And I'm sure there's people there that believe in true freedom and liberty as well. So hopefully they do. And that's why they were listening to the show, because they feel just like a lot of people, or I would probably say the majority of people in the United States don't like their government. That doesn't mean, do people automatically think that people in other countries are different, that everyone loves their government? All the people of Iran or Syria or any of these, Pakistan, that they don't feel the same way, that they don't feel that their government sucks and what their government does and the laws and how they treat people. People in the U.S. seem to just automatically think like, oh, well, everybody else agrees with their government, but, in the U.S., no. I mean, I'm sure there's people in Pakistan that if they heard my show, they would agree with me. There's probably a lot of them. I'm sure there's people in Iran that I don't think you could get it. I'm sure it's blocked over there. Not my show specifically, but probably just Spreaker and stuff like that might be blocked. I don't know how they do that, though, like, because I have my own website. So how would they, is it where it's located that they're blocking everything that's located in the U.S.? Is it, I know China blocks a lot of stuff, but I know you can block a specific website, but there could be something on that website that's also on another website. So like my show is on my personal website, at least alive, and I have a lot of the old archives. I got to get back to posting the daily archives. But so how would they block, like, my site's a little site. Nobody knows about my site. A government wouldn't know about it. So would they be blocking any site hosted by, like, a certain, I don't want to say who hosts my site, but just in case. But would they be blocking anybody in the U.S. that hosts a site, or any company that, so I don't know exactly how they do that, and I'm sure some get by, but anybody that is in Pakistan and listens to the show, thank you for listening. I don't know that there is. It might have just been that one person who clicked on it. They might have clicked on it by accident. But, as I said before, I support people that support true freedom and liberty. It really doesn't matter. I mean, first, of course, is the U.S. that I'm concerned with, because this is where I live. But after that, I support anybody anywhere that supports true freedom and liberty. And I don't want to see people in other countries having bombs dropped on them that are innocent people. And they have double oppression in a lot of countries. They get oppressed by their country, then they get oppressed by the United States, and they're like, well, I didn't do anything to the United States, but I'm being oppressed by them, and then I'm being oppressed by my own country. Being here, you don't really get oppressed by other countries, just your own. But I'm going to take a quick break. If you'd like to call in and basically bring up anything related to freedom and liberty, you can call in at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. Or you can Skype into the show. Just send a contact request to Nonpartisan Liberty for All and let us know your name, where you're calling from, and what you want to talk about. And if you're calling in to expedite your call, just send a text with the same information and then just call right back so I don't have to screen the actual call. So, and if you haven't, go to nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. Check us out there. We have now, I try to do it at least once a week, if not more often. I write articles on the site as well. They're more, I would call them more editorials than articles, because it's more just my opinion about different things. So if you go to the website, you will find a list and you'll see editorials, original articles. They're pretty much the same thing. Blogs, I think, but I think I moved everything to editorials because blogs are more, I think, less. I was talking about this yesterday. I think blogs are less formal, where it's just kind of somebody just writing about themselves and not really caring about the format or run-on sentences and things like that, whereas an editorial is more professional but doesn't have all of these references, and I would look at that as the major difference. So that's why I call them editorials. It's basically just my opinion on certain things. Some of them that have been talked about on the show, some of them that have not been, but a lot of them actually have been talked about on the show. But anyway, and you can go there and you can add your comments. You can add your comments actually just in general, or you can add your comments to a specific article. So definitely go check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. I actually just I paid like for the domain until 2020, but there was something I only paid for a year that I guess I just had to pay. So that it cost me $35. I don't know what it was. Unfortunately, they could be ripping me off, and I don't even know. But we'll be right back after this. nonpartisanlibertyforall.com.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
Are you and your family prepared for a grid failure?
We begin today with the reaction over the brutal killing of American journalist Steven Sotloff. ISIS has released a video that shows the beheading of the journalist, which they say is retaliation for the Obama administration's continued airstrikes in Iraq. Keep in mind, Sotloff is the second American journalist to be killed by ISIS. His death comes 2 weeks after journalist James Foley was executed in a similar video. President Obama vowed today to punish the militants he said had repulsed the world. Take a listen.
Our objective is clear, and that is to degrade and destroy ISIL so that it's no longer a threat, not just to Iraq, but also the region and to the United States.
Vice President Joe Biden also condemned the killing in a speech today with some harsh words. Take a look.
Presidential candidate Senator Ted Cruz has been moving through New York as of today. He's in studio and joining me now. Senator, nice to see you.
Bill,
welcome back. I know you did not have a chance to hear that, but you just heard the clip about ISIS not being contained. This week you said you would carpet bomb ISIS into oblivion. You said, I don't know if sand can glow in the dark, but we're going to find out. You also said you will not put ground troops in Syria to fight ISIS.
Well, actually, that's not what I said.
Why not?
What I said is we need to do whatever is necessary to defeat ISIS. And that's what I've said from the very beginning, that what we need to start with is a commander-in-chief that lays out the objective that we should utterly destroy ISIS. That's what's missing right now. President Obama refuses even to say the words radical Islamic terrorism, much less take on and defeat ISIS. And in terms of how we do so, once we have that objective, we need to listen to the judgment of our military leaders, of our generals and admirals, in terms of how you execute that plan. Now, I believe the first steps to that plan should be overwhelming air power. To put things in context, in the first Persian Gulf War, we launched roughly 1,100 air attacks a day. We carpet bombed them for 37 days, and at the end of that, our troops went in and in 36 hours mopped up what little was left of the Iraqi army. In contrast, the Obama administration right now, they're launching between 15 and 30 air attacks a day. It's pinprick foreign policy, it's photo-op foreign policy, and it's ineffective. The second element of our strategy right now needs to be arming the Kurds. The Peshmerga, the fighting forces of the Kurds, they are on the ground, they are fighting, they are effective fighters, they are allies of ours. Right now, ISIS is using U.S. military equipment that they've seized in Iraq. And the Kurds' equipment is outmoded, and yet the Obama administration, for political reasons, it doesn't want to upset Baghdad, refuses to arm the Kurds. We should use the Kurds as our boots on the ground. Now, in addition to that, it may well require embedded special forces and other troops, particularly to direct the air power, but it should be driven by what is militarily necessary to accomplish the task.
It seems like their strategy is changing. And for folks like you, it may not be fast enough. But for the record, you are disagreeing with my assessment that you will consider putting troops on the ground in Iraq and Syria. For the record, correct.
I have said from the beginning that we should follow the judgment of the commanders. Over a year ago, at a hearing very much like this hearing you're playing right now, where you had then Secretary Hagel and then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dempsey, I asked at the time, I said, if the objective were to utterly destroy ISIS, not degrade them, not weaken them, but utterly destroy them in 90 days, what would be required militarily, in your expert judgment, to accomplish that task? General Dempsey responded, he said, I'm sorry, that's simply not possible. I said, okay, maybe that time frame is not a reasonable time frame. So you tell me, in your expert military judgment, if the object is to utterly destroy them, what's required to do so, and what is the right time frame? And the answer that General Dempsey gave, he said, there is no military solution to this problem. The only way to solve this is to change the underlying conditions on the ground, the poverty, so that young people are not susceptible to radicalism. And as I said shortly after that, that was utter nonsense. It was a political answer. The solution to ISIS is not expanded Medicaid in Iraq. You know, the State Department spokeswoman said the answer to ISIS was get them all jobs. No, that's not the answer. The answer is we need a commander-in-chief that lays out a military objective that if you take up arms and join ISIS, if you wage jihad against the United States of America, that you are signing your death warrant.
Well, what Carter just said in that testimony, every recommendation he's taken to the president, he's taken him up on it. Okay, I've got a number of other topics to go through. This sort of dominates the news for this hour and a major topic. You also are pushing for a ban on refugees coming into the U.S. and allowing governors to have a stake in that. You disagree with Donald Trump when he said you should ban all Muslims coming into the United States. You disagree on his position, but you will not criticize him. Why not?
I don't think it's the right approach, but the approach that I do think is right is legislation that I've introduced in the United States Senate. You know, yesterday I did a press conference in Washington with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and the two of us together, we talked about 3 different pieces of legislation I've introduced to address the crisis we're facing right now. The first is legislation I've introduced that would put a 3-year moratorium on refugees coming from countries where ISIS or al-Qaeda control a substantial amount of territory. And the reason is simple. That Obama's own FBI has told Congress they cannot vet these refugees to determine whether or not they're ISIS terrorists. The first obligation should be protecting the safety of American citizens, so this puts in place a 3-year moratorium. The second piece of legislation is legislation I introduced just yesterday that would allow governors to opt out of receiving refugees if the federal government is not doing a sufficient job of screening them to make sure they're not terrorists. Some 30 governors have joined Texas Governor Greg Abbott in saying they don't want...
Mostly Republicans and some Democratic governors, too, as we discussed during the events in France. But back to the Trump question now. You may not address him specifically, but this is how he talked about you Monday night in South Carolina.
The people that give these millions of dollars to these horrible, corrupt PACs, they're corrupt. They totally control Bush and Rubio, and I won't say Cruz because he's been very nice to me. Nah, but he's been nice. He's got to hit me first. Once he hits me, I promise you. I promise you.
When does that change, Senator?
Listen, from the beginning, my approach, not just to Donald Trump, but to all of the candidates, is not to engage in personal insults and attacks. You know, you think of the first couple of debates, that they just descended into food fights of personal insults back and forth.
And you had a very effective comeback that got a lot of headlines. And maybe the more appropriate question is, does it change?
Look, I like and respect Donald Trump. I don't anticipate that changing at all. And my approach... No. The reason why I won't get engaged in personal insults and attacks, I don't think the American people care about a bunch of politicians bickering like school children. What they're interested in is positive, real solutions to the great challenges facing this country. That's why I am working to lead on defending this nation against ISIS, on standing up to radical Islamic terrorism, on stopping President Obama's plan to bring tens of thousands of Syrian Muslim refugees.
No critique on Trump.
I am grateful Donald Trump is running, and I'll tell you what, he has helped focus the discussion on securing the border. Border security is national security. I think that's been very beneficial.
And on that topic, Marco Rubio's hitting you hard. National security, immigration, surveillance laws, the ethanol vote in Iowa, and on and on. You're going to see him in 7 days in the next debate. How are you going to respond to him?
You know, I'll tell you, yesterday, Mark Levin wrote a fantastic column in Conservative Review talking about Marco Rubio's super PAC coming after me and spreading lies, being deceptive. What Mark Levin said is that Rubio is engaging in Alinskyite tactics of simply lying. That's Mark Levin calling him out. And the reason is understandable. Listen, I like Marco Rubio as a friend of mine. He's a good guy. But his campaign, you know, the New York Times just reported the Rubio campaign is very nervous because conservatives are uniting behind our campaign. You know, polling came out this week, had us in first place in Iowa. That has the Rubio campaign very concerned. And so what they're doing is, number one, launching false attack ads. But number two, they want to change the subject because, remember, Marco Rubio joined with Chuck Schumer and Barack Obama in proposing a massive amnesty plan that included giving Barack Obama more authority to allow in Syrian refugees with no background checks whatsoever. That is a real problem given the threat of ISIS. So, of course, they're going to try to attack with false attacks to change the topic.
A preview of Las Vegas next week. Senator, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you,
Ted
Bill.
Cruz here in studio. We'll see you soon.
Promoting the ideas of true freedom and liberty, nonpartisan liberty for all radio with Dave Bourne.
702-470-7664. That is the number if you'd like to call in, or you can Skype in at Nonpartisan Liberty for all one word. That was Ted Cruz talking about, that was an interview from, I believe, a couple weeks ago, but talking about ISIS. And he also said today, as I had mentioned earlier, that safety is the most important thing, referring to ISIS. Now, one of the things I was just thinking of is that where did ISIS, because he was kind of talking about this, you know, getting rid of ISIS, and if how would we eliminate them and how long would it take, and them giving a politically correct answer. But when did ISIS start attacking the United States? Because I don't remember that ever happening. Probably because it didn't. So this whole idea of talking about ISIS and security and military and all of this stuff being the most important item in the elections, or most important issue in the current election, is insane in a way, because when did ISIS attack the U.S.? Now, I know they claim, I've never even heard ISIS say that their goal was attack the U.S. Now, personally, I think ISIS is a proxy army that is run by the CIA, that in order to destabilize all these nations, as I had played that first clip that's been around for a while with Wesley Clark, who said that the U.S. government wanted to go after all these countries, essentially destabilize the region, which they have done. There's still a couple of remaining countries that they haven't went after yet, but for the most part, they went after all those countries. Syria is still standing for the time being. But when did ISIS attack the U.S.? You have a guy who was born in the U.S. He brought over some bride, I believe, from Pakistan, and they attacked their job. Now, first of all, and that being what was referred to as the San Bernardino shooting, but I know from what they said, now them being government media, from what government media said, and I don't know as any of it to be true. To be honest, it's hard to believe anything that government media says. Just period. It is. It's you don't know what's true, you don't know what's not. But they claim that he was radicalized, that she came from. I hate when they say that they were radicalized. It's like they were brainwashed in a like they were you see in those cartoons or something when they brainwash somebody in like a machine and or something like that, or in like Total Recall when they were gonna turn him back into what was he, Hauser or Quaid? I don't know. Hauser, because he was Quaid. Anybody who's seen Total Recall, anybody who hasn't, just totally ignore that. But like they put you in a machine and radicalize you and like turn your brain into mush or something. But which pretty much that's what the U.S. government has done to people. They have radicalized them in a different way their whole lives. But so he supposedly became radicalized and she came over, even though they all went to, the people he worked with went to the baby shower. They just had a kid and all of this stuff. And of course, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Just like a lot of things that happen like that, they never seem to ever make any sense. And why is that? It's very strange that most of the things that you hear happening in the news don't make any sense, where it's never something like it's an older, lonely guy who has reasons to be hateful and goes and, you know, shoots up a place or something. Like, usually something that would make sense never does. But whatever. So let's assume that, you know, they were Islamic terrorists, I guess, and that they did it because the other thing was he did it at his work. Why do it at your work? I mean, maybe he hated those people that much and he was fucking nuts, and so was she. I don't know. Maybe they didn't even do it at all and somebody else did it and they framed it on them. When people always turn up dead, I always have questions like, who could refute anything that happened now because they're dead? But either way, they were not ISIS. They were people who sympathized with ISIS. That's like saying, you know, I watched this documentary when I was a kid of some 13-year-old who he was obsessed with Friday the 13th movies. So he put on a hockey mask when he killed his friend's mother. I guess his mother was mean to him or something. I don't know. I don't know if she was like abusive, if it was something like that or whatever it was, but he agreed to kill his mother for him, and he was 13 years old, the one who actually did the killing, and he put on a Jason mask and, you know, pretended to be Jason from Friday the 13th. So it's almost like that, like they were obsessed with some group called ISIS and then they went and shot a bunch of people. I mean, you have people that think they're in the military and go and do things. You have people that kill abortion doctors because they think they're part of some bigger plan, I guess, to save babies. So they were not part of ISIS. So you cannot say that killing had anything to do with ISIS. They like to say that because then it makes it look better, like, oh, look, the U.S. has been attacked by ISIS. It gives them the opportunity to say that. But the reality is, you're talking about the most important issue in a presidential election, and they're all saying it's the most important presidential election, which they say every fucking presidential election. Oh, this is the most important one, man. We gotta make sure we get it right this time, because we don't, things are gonna be fucked up. Things have been fucked up for a long time. So let's, not try to fool ourselves here. And it doesn't matter who's president, because the president isn't really running shit anyway. And even if the president did have the power and wasn't controlled, they're supposed to execute the laws anyway. So the president doesn't really have a lot of power in his actual job anyway. You know what I mean? So it's kind of fucked up, I guess, however you look at it. But anyway, the U.S. has not been attacked by ISIS. They, as far as I know, now I know they had those videos that they claimed to be ISIS, and they said that in those videos, oh, we're going to attack the U.S. Or I don't even know that they said they were going to attack the U.S. Supposedly they killed some Americans that they had found in the Middle East, in countries in the Middle East that were reporters. And who knows if they're even really dead, because those videos were obviously fake, the parts where they cut their heads off. And just in case anybody doesn't remember or didn't hear about these, maybe like 6 months ago, there were videos that were coming out that were being supposedly released by ISIS. And in these videos, they were cutting the heads off of, I think, mostly journalists, American and European journalists. So they would show them with a sword cutting their head off, and it looked really fake, like if they had killed them, they did it already. Like maybe they cut their throat already and then made it look like they were doing it again, or they killed them some other way, or they didn't kill them then, they killed them after, if they even killed them at all. So regarding those videos, I don't think you can take anything seriously in them. And at the same time, you don't know whether those people were really even in ISIS or had anything to do with it. And again, I mean, as I have said, I think ISIS is a proxy army for the United States. So if you take the word of the former head of NATO, Wesley Clark, who talked about going into all these countries and getting rid of their leaders and essentially causing a whole disruption of the Middle East and everything being in total chaos for the most part. If you take that for what it is, and then from there say, okay, now for the U.S. Army or the U.S. government, same thing, I guess, going in there and doing it themselves, which they did in certain parts, of course, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. I don't know what they did. And I'm sure in all these countries that they didn't have actual armies in, that they had special forces or some kind of CIA operatives or something like that. But what better way to conduct something like this and to accomplish it without anybody knowing that you have anything to do with it, and then at the same time, not that I think they care, but they don't have to get any Americans killed. I think they care public persona wise, because then they would, families and Americans in general would say, look at all the soldiers you got killed. So what better way to do it than to create your own army, essentially, and have them do it. And then you get what you want, well, sort of, because it looks like they're fucking up. And you don't have to do a lot of these things that you normally would. It doesn't make you look bad. It doesn't get anybody killed, but it still accomplishes what you want to accomplish. And the other thing that makes me think that as well is, at the same time, you have a lot of the candidates talking about the same thing almost, that having their armies, now obviously not ISIS, but it's to defeat ISIS, but to have the soldiers in the Middle East be the ones fighting ISIS, and then have special forces kind of overseeing, but essentially having all the fighting done by the soldiers of all of these countries. So that's what they're saying right now. So when you look at that, and then the other part of it is Assad, that they need to get Assad out because of the oil pipeline. There is still the whole issue of oil and the petrodollar. So for those who don't know, we've talked about it on the show a lot, especially when Ken Shorgen is on, who's on every other Wednesday. We talk about geopolitics and the economy. But when people buy oil from OPEC, and Saudi Arabia is the biggest OPEC country, and there's a few others, I'm not sure of all of them. I think Jordan might be one. I should actually look it up and get a list, so I'm familiar with all of the OPEC countries. I think Iraq was one as well. But when people buy oil from OPEC, they have to buy it in U.S. dollars, which means they have to go through this system called the SWIFT system. So then they charge money off the top there. It's like exchanging money or a credit card fee or an exchange fee. And think about it. If you're buying $1 million worth of oil or even more, and you're exchanging into millions of US dollars, and even if the fees are 1% or 2, 3, 4, 5%, that's a lot of money when you're dealing with these huge amounts of money. So not only are they making money off the transaction fees, they're making money off of them using U.S. dollars. It also allows them to push off the inflation onto other countries. So I never hear anyone talk about this, really. When they talk about it, they usually talk about the oil, like even Trump, but he's not talking about the petrodollar. And I think, do they not know? Or do they just not mention it because they would have to explain the whole thing? Because I wasn't aware of the whole system till recently, to be honest. And that's just something because I just never looked into the whole system and never really researched it, which I probably should have. And that's essentially what replaced gold when the dollar was taken off the gold standard by Nixon to fund the Vietnam War, meaning they could print a bunch of money to fund the Vietnam War. That really what ended up replacing it in a sense, because the dollar isn't literally backed by oil. You can't take a dollar and say, I want my oil. Give me a cup of oil that equals my dollar. But that's essentially what replaced it. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking, because at the time, I don't know that that was the plan. I think that evolved later. So I don't know what they were thinking when they took the dollar off the gold standard. And obviously, that's probably one of the worst decisions ever made, I think, when it comes to financial decisions made. So that's why it is so important to get Assad out, because of the friendship with Russia and the oil pipeline. So anybody that is able to sell oil and sell oil in currency other than U.S. dollars is a threat to the U.S. So it makes you think differently when you look at all the things that they've been doing in the Middle East, because you think about the oil, but you think about it totally differently. Because you think about it like, I would always think the oil meaning they got to make sure that they have oil. And from what I understand, the U.S. has a lot of oil themselves. So that's not really an issue. And Canada, I mean, that whole Keystone pipeline, it's oil from Canada. I mean, they have a lot of oil as well. It doesn't seem like there's an oil issue at all in the world. It's about the money and the collapse of the U.S. dollar. So if you're looking at it from the point of view of if we don't stop these people from doing this, the whole U.S. economy would collapse. That's how I think they're looking at it. And I don't think it makes it any better or makes it any more right or justifies it in any way. But I would just always look at it differently. And when I say that, I don't mean like I look at it now that they're not as bad. I look at it now like they're worse, to be honest. Because they've had 40 years really to find other ways to do something about the currency. And if it wasn't for the fact that all these other countries were just worse off, like China, we had talked about when Ken Shorgen was on the show, and he's a historian. I believe he has a master's in, it might be political science and I think he has a double major, history, political science, something like that. But he had when he was on the show, he had brought that up, I believe, as well, about all of these other countries. Because I said, well, how come China? Because China's trying to build their own SWIFT system, so basically they can sell their own oil or anything, because pretty much the U.S. dollar being the reserve currency, 90% or something of goods are between countries are traded in U.S. dollars, which means that all these countries have to hold on to U.S. dollars. And I guess he said that there's a couple other currencies that are added to the list, but the majority of transactions between countries are done in U.S. dollars. And if it wasn't for the fact that all these other countries were so bad that their economies or their currency wasn't so fucked up, they probably would have surpassed the U.S. a long time ago. But it wasn't that. It was the U.S. dollar was so great. It was that in comparison to everybody else, it was. So that's where you think about, well, you may not think about it, but something that comes into my mind of, you know, this being a world economy and being controlled on a world level, that things that happen are controlled on that level, not just the U.S. So when I talk about the powers that be, they're not just, some of them might just be affect the U.S., but I think it's more of a world thing that these groups or organizations or people or whoever they may be balance out the world in a sense. And because you would think, why wouldn't somebody take advantage of that and build up their country or their currency, or, you know? So I think it's, when you look at these things and you look at the control over, say, the president or Congress, and them, for the most part, not really deciding on things, the corporations and lobbyists and billionaires and secret groups or whatever you want to call them, really being the ones making these decisions. It's on a global level. It's not just on a United States level. But going back to ISIS, so you have I guess the leading, well, I guess you'd still call Trump, but he's pretty much saying the same thing. Most of the Republicans are saying the same thing. But you have Ted Cruz come out and say that this is the most important thing or most important issue of this election is keeping people safe, and referring to ISIS. ISIS, who, again, hasn't been a threat to the U.S., period, to this point. Again, the San Bernardino killing, that could have been, you know, when you look at that, it happened to be ISIS, but it could have been Al-Qaeda. It could have been anybody radical. What is the difference between whatever ISIS is putting out there and whatever Al-Qaeda put out there, who was created by the CIA as well? And that's documented because of the Afghan war, where Osama bin Laden was a CIA operative who was leading Afghanistan in the war against Russia. So, which obviously backfired in their face, but maybe it didn't, because he did exactly what they wanted him to do. Who knows? But anyway, it seems to make perfect sense for them to just hire basically a proxy army to go and do their dirty work. And of course, they're not going to come out and say that, because at the same time, the other thing they can do is what they're doing right now that we're talking about tonight, is scare the American people. If you've watched any of these debates, and I think this has come up in every single one of them, but if you haven't seen it, what they're doing is, and most of the debates, I think they even did a whole debate on it, is they're talking about ISIS and the border and keeping people safe and how ISIS could easily get into the U.S. Somebody could get here with a nuke. Ted Cruz today mentioned the Super Bowl and said that there wasn't enough security. Now, granted, this was actually in not last year's Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl before. But they probably did the same thing in last year's Super Bowl. They had said that they had snipers, guns pointed at people, that the security at the Super Bowl is just ridiculous. Unnecessary, I think, in many cases in what they're doing. And when I say many cases, I mean the different things they're doing. But he said, well, what if a helicopter, ISIS did this with a helicopter and dropped bombs or whatever? So, one, I don't think people have to worry about ISIS unless not the president, but the controllers of ISIS, or if the U.S. government wants something to happen. If the U.S. government wants something to happen, then something will regarding ISIS. Now, as far as the quote-unquote lone wolf people, most of them don't have the means. They don't have the ability to get a fucking nuclear bomb or a nuclear weapon over. You're going to drag that through the border over Mexico and get it here? And all of this stuff, they can do some damage, but not like people think. I mean, even the Oklahoma City bombing, experts have said that what Timothy McVeigh had, it was impossible for it to do the damage that it did. Which would mean that he wasn't the one who did it. And, of course, that's a whole nother issue, but I believe that as well. And that also being, there was a man I had on the air who was involved in the militia movement back then. And they have documents, FBI documents, that you can actually get on the internet that show Timothy McVeigh calling his house and showing up there, and he never even knew him. And what kind of saved him is that he was a junior, and it showed up at his father's house. He showed up at his father's house, and the calls are made to his father's house. So they couldn't connect them. But he had thought that they were trying to set him up along with Timothy McVeigh as well. So that, and there's a really great documentary called A Noble Lie, and you can even get it on YouTube. So especially now where a lot of people have TVs with YouTube on them, or they have they have Wii, and you can, whatever, or Xbox or whatever, and that you can actually watch YouTube and it looks like you're just watching TV. It's actually really cool. It's on YouTube, so You can, if you have one of those, you can watch it there. But there's so many things in that movie. Like, there was a police officer who was one of the first responders who didn't believe what happened, was collecting information and doing his own investigation, ended up dead, but he was found with handcuff marks and all of these things that would be impossible to do, and they ruled it a suicide. So it's like it would be impossible to obviously handcuff yourself, and I think he supposedly shot himself and slit his own throat, just like the guy in the movie. I can't think of the name of the movie right now, but that was involved in he was the reporter, Gary Webb, who was the reporter involved in releasing the story about the CIA flooding LA with drugs and the Iran-Contra. I think that had to do with the Iran-Contra as well, and that his death was ruled a suicide, and he was shot twice in the head. So you have a lot of murders that go essentially as suicides or heart attacks or whatever they may be that they're not. I mean, if there's no way that you're going to tell me you're going to be able to shoot yourself twice in the head and they're going to rule it as suicide and that's okay. So that's what I mean when there's been other reporters, the Michael, I can't remember his last name, from Rolling Stone, whose car blew up essentially, and he had information that he was investigating the CIA or the military. It was something to do with a CIA operation, I think, or the military, or he had just told a friend that he was going to go off the radar for a little while, and then his car blows up. And witnesses they said that he went off the road and went into a tree, which he did, but that was after his engine just blew up. But people that were there had said that his engine just blew out of the car. And of course, what happens there? Nothing. So it really comes down to the point that the government can legally murder you if they want to, and they can rule it whatever they want to rule it. And that's where I say that in reality, we don't have any freedom. Just because they don't do it to everybody that says anything about them doesn't mean that, oh, well, we're free because you can talk about it. And as I said a bunch of times before that somebody had said to me, well, of course we're free, because if we weren't free, you couldn't do your show. And just because I can do my show doesn't mean anything, because if the government wanted me dead for whatever reason, then I would be dead. And that's it. And not only that, it would be right out in the open. It wouldn't be something where I just disappeared. They don't have to do that. So whether it's having a cop just shoot me, you have the guy in Orlando that supposedly knew the Boston, I was going to say the Boston bomber, but one of the men accused of the Boston bombing, the one who was killed by the police, that they just shot him 8 times, shot him in the top of the head, changed their story a bunch of times. He was unarmed, and that was fine. So, again, it's if the government can kill you and that's okay and that's legal, essentially, then obviously you don't have freedom. Now, just because they want to maintain an illusion of freedom and they allow some people to get away with some stuff, a lot of people, I guess, that doesn't mean that now all of a sudden you have freedom. To me, it's the point that if the government can do this, and this, like arrest you for a post on Facebook or kill you just because they want to, or things along those lines, if they can do that, it doesn't mean that because you did something and they didn't do that to you that you're free, because some people are able to get away with it. It's just the fact that it can happen, to me, that makes it it wasn't freedom that we were talking, that he said. It was a police state, because I said we live in a police state, and he said if we lived in a police state you couldn't do your show. That was the word, but I would use freedom as well. So going back to this whole thing with ISIS and Ted Cruz and what he said, it's not just him. This is what they're focusing most of the debates on, that they are going into ISIS a lot, as well as the Middle East, immigration, and kind of tying all these things together. So I think immigration can be a separate issue, but they're tying it to ISIS just for the fact of, okay, well, ISIS can come in because all these people are getting in through the border, and the border's not secure. And we need to secure the border, and we need to build a wall, and we need to do all of this shit because of ISIS, who hasn't done anything to the U.S. So I think people tend to forget about that when they're thinking about all of this shit. You would think that ISIS has, attacked people in the United States. They had done all this shit, but they haven't done anything to the U.S. And they won't unless the U.S. government wants them to, because they're run by the U.S. And I think that's why Obama didn't want to bomb over there. That's why they had helicopters releasing supplies and weapons. And the whole bullshit about they stole the tanks and all the weapons of the Iraqi army, really? That's what happened when they still had troops over there. I know they said that Iraq, they pulled all the troops out, but they technically, maybe not actual U.S. military, but that they had mercenaries, paid military, from what I understand. And the story was that, this is the story I heard from government media, was that they stole all of these weapons. I don't know how you do it. I guess they were just sitting there, because otherwise, how do you take them all if you don't have any weapons to, like, how do you take a tank unless you have a more powerful tank or something? So from what they had said, it was like they had just been walking by and, oh, look, here are all these weapons. And it's no, the U.S. gave them weapons. And a lot of these guys are the same people that when John McCain went over there in a few years ago, and he said, yeah, we need to back them. The whole thing started from the Syrian civil war. We didn't hear anything about any group called ISIS until like 2 years ago, maybe. And then all of a sudden, because before that, you have Obama saying, geez, about 6 months, maybe less, and I can actually pull the clip. You have Obama saying that the Al-Qaeda's on the run. They're decimated. And actually, I'm going to take a break, so we'll play that during the break along with some other stuff because it's pretty short. So, but yeah, you have them right before that say, "Oh yeah, Al-Qaeda's decimated, and we don't have to worry about the terrorists." And then all of a sudden, well, now there's ISIS because they wanted to go after Syria. Why was it such a big deal to go after Syria? Syria was in a civil war. Why would you get involved in a civil war, period? I know people are dying. I understand. If you want to get involved diplomatically and talk to Assad, and if you could talk to one of the leaders of the rebels and try to negotiate something, I think that's fine, because a lot of people bring up this word isolationist and, oh, you're one of those isolationists. And I would say that I'm not an isolationist. I don't think that, well, of course, I don't think there should really be countries or governments, but based on the current setup that they shouldn't do anything. I don't think they should do anything militarily. I don't think they should have a military. I think if they do anything, it's, just to try to help as an arbitrator, basically, like the same thing an arbitrator would do is help them negotiate whatever their issues are. And if you can't, then you can't. Then they got to take care of it. And if it's not affecting you directly and they're having a civil war, then they're having a civil war. I realize part of the problem now is you have all these refugees. Why you have them now and didn't have them before is kind of surprising, because this civil war has been going on, 3-4 years now? And then all of a sudden, now that there's ISIS, there are all these refugees, and they have to come into the United States along with all these other countries. It doesn't sound right. And hopefully everybody else out there looks at things and questions them as well, and doesn't just listen to government media and even, independent media, that no matter what, always question things and always think about things as far as, do things make sense? And I'm not just saying, well, this doesn't make sense, so that means this happened. I mean, you can't just take one little item and say, well, this doesn't make sense, so this means it's a big conspiracy. No. But if more people would question things than just take somebody's word for something, especially when you're dealing with the media at this point, we're at a point where it's, you can't believe anything you hear in government media. Nothing. And I'm to the point where, I'm even talking about just basic details that normally you wouldn't even question. Even stuff like that, like in the San Bernardino incident, that I even question all aspects, like, did they really even do it, or did this woman really come over from another country, and just everything now. I mean, and maybe that's not the best example to give, but it's just because you don't know. And the government will go as far as they have to go. It's like it's a game to maintain control and to not only maintain it, I think they got that down pretty well. It's to continue to expand it, expand on control, expand on what they're involved in, just like a business does. They want to expand into different fields. So, well, I'll play that. It's a montage of Obama and Biden, and I believe it was about 6 months, maybe even less, some of them, from when ISIS was or came into the picture or into the news. So it doesn't make a lot of sense at all. But we're going to take a quick break. Make sure you go to nonpartisanlibertyforall.com and check out some of the articles or really editorials over there, as well as other things. You can also immediately after the show, if you had missed any of it, you can hear or you can go listen to the archives on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spreaker, just to name a few, Tumblr or the Tumble L, because or the Tum LR because there's no E. So you can listen to the show immediately following. Well, it might take about 5 to 10 minutes to process the files, but right after that, you can listen to any of the show on any of those applications. So we will be right back. NonpartisanLibertyForAll.com.
By the way, doesn't decimate mean you destroy everything but 1/10 of 1% or 10%? Decimate?
I think maybe. I'm not really sure about the technical definition.
Well, can you get back to me on that while we roll to this tape of people talking about Al-Qaeda being decimated?
There should be no doubt. Today, America is stronger, and Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat. We've decimated Al-Qaeda's leadership.
Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat, and bin Laden is dead.
We've decimated Al-Qaeda Central. We have eliminated Osama bin Laden.
Al-Qaeda is much weaker than it was when I came into office.
Osama bin Laden is dead, and General Motors is alive.
The war in Afghanistan is coming to a close. Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat. Osama bin Laden is dead. Today, the core of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and Pakistan is on the path to defeat. Their remaining operatives spend more time thinking about their own safety than plotting against us.
The beginning of that speech mattered too. Like having the President of the United States telling America, this is not World War III. And that takes some political courage in this current environment. And in a news cycle that doesn't, where there's no value in, you're not in danger. Yeah. Your loved ones are not threatened. Like that was good. That was a presidenting thing to do.
But there was, Anderson Cooper said, a lot of people feel deeply that we are in trouble.
In World War III, yeah.
So maybe we are in World War III. They don't know it because they feel it.
I didn't have that information. So.
Yeah. No, I was going to talk about that on the show today. I ran out of time. He said, we're not under an existential threat. And it was a bold thing to say, but it's so obvious that it's funny that it's bold. So is ISIS going to take San Antonio? I mean, it's absurd to think.
Who said that?
I think in the third round.
Threat.
They just raised D.C. to the ground.
I think ISIS could take San Antonio in a round robin. But the point is that you're talking about what he said. I don't know who I was telling her, but that Lawrence Krauss, you know him, that atheist.
The futurist.
From Kansas, right? He's that professor. He wrote a real reasonable article in the New York Times recently about, hey, well, we're not really under threat from ISIS. They really can't do anything to us, and we shouldn't be worrying this much about terrorism in America. And all of a sudden, everybody came, oh, you fucking knew it, you're aggressive. What's wrong with it? Go quit your day job.
Well...
So that's what Barack Obama's basically trying to... It's like, what's that?
And he's an atheist.
And he's an atheist. So and he's piggybacking, I think, on that. Like, oh, look, even... these atheist lefty guys are on my side, so maybe that's why he felt strong enough to make that point. No?
Yeah, well...
I was just trying to check if you were still listening to what I was saying.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And as you can tell, I was pretty honest about it. So I was like, yeah, maybe.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, who's the Executive Director of the Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Daniel, welcome to our program again.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Well, there's some very interesting news this weekend. It's on an issue we talk about all the time on foreign policy of the Middle East, but...
So we're at Harvard University talking with students, asking them, what is a greater threat to world peace, ISIS or America? What is a bigger threat to world peace, America or ISIS?
To world peace? Well, America.
In many ways, I have to think it's America, because America's making decisions that are much more likely to affect the world.
What is a greater threat to world peace, America or ISIS?
I think American imperialism and our protection of oil interests in the Middle East are destabilizing the region and allowing groups like ISIS to gain power.
As a Western civilization, we're to blame for a lot of the problems that we're facing now. I don't think anyone would argue that we didn't create the problem of ISIS ourselves.
We are, at some level, the cause of it.
The amount of spending that America has on causes of potential destruction in the world is really outlandish. We've been learning about this recently, how much America spends on defense mechanisms alone, and it's really quite astounding compared to any other country in the world, really.
I just had an interesting conversation last night with a couple of my neighbors.
I hope that girl doesn't go to Harvard, because she said defense mechanisms, the amount of money that they spend on defense mechanisms. I don't know. That just sounds like, yeah, yes, we spend all this money on defense mechanisms. Like, it sounds like toys that, whatever. Sorry, back to the clip.
Neighbors, in that they can see how the ideology of ISIS might appeal to people in the Middle East who aren't familiar with how we think over here as Americans. They have a skewed view of us, just as a lot of Americans have a skewed view of them.
Of ISIS.
Of ISIS, yeah.
Almost $600 billion, the biggest defense budget in the world. 2017 will be another year of war for the U.S. With who? Russia, maybe. The Pentagon names it among top threats and is ready to spend $3.4 billion to fight it, more than 4 times last year's budget. ISIS will cost America $7.5 billion. But wait a second. If Russia and ISIS are threats to the U.S. and Russia is fighting ISIS, why spend a cent? Just have your enemy take out your enemy.
You are listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All Radio with your host, Dave Bourne.
And we are back. I am your host, Dave Bourne, and you are listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. If you'd like to call in, you can call in at 702-470-7664. Again, that's 702-470-7664. If you'd like to expedite that process, just send a text message with your name, where you're calling from, and what you'd like to talk about. You can also call us via Skype. Just send a contact request to Nonpartisan Liberty for All with the same information, your name, what you want to talk about, and where you're calling from. So, with the exception of maybe the Harvard clip, I agreed with that, but I could tell where some of the people were coming from in their attitudes towards they seemed like the more blame America for everything type people, where I definitely agree, though. I think America is a bigger threat than ISIS, because I think they created ISIS, so obviously, and that they are a bigger threat. But one of the things I always like to make clear is that my issue is with the government and governments in general. So I don't hate America or hate the U.S. I have an issue with the U.S. government and there actually being a government. There are a lot of people that I think have this just kind of hate for the country in general and for the people and for everything that has been done by the country throughout history. It's hard to explain what I mean, because I think that definitely the government has done a lot of bad things and going back throughout history. But some people have this kind of attitude. It's usually progressives that is, I can't explain it. I can see what I mean when I see somebody that has that attitude and talks about it, but it's hard for me to explain exactly what I mean. But that's not how I look at the country. Like, I don't look at the U.S. and think this country's better. And I think that they do. Now, I don't think the U.S. is better than, well, actually, I think it's better in that, I was going to say, I don't think it's better like the people are better, like an arrogance type thing. But I think it's definitely better to live in than a lot of countries, even though there are a lot of bad things that the government does and oppresses people and things like that. But they have an attitude like, well, this country's better and this country's better. And I have an issue with the government. So I have an issue with all of those countries because the government is my issue. And if any of these other countries had the power that the U.S. had, they'd be just as bad as the U.S. And I always use that example of Palestine and Israel when people were promoting Palestine, like I love Palestine shirts and all of this stuff. And Palestine is fucked up. Just because Israel is fucked up and they were doing some fucked up things and bombings and things like that and killing innocent people, that doesn't mean all of a sudden Palestine is great. They're both governments, so I have a problem with both of them. So that may explain better what I mean, but those sounded like the type of people that would be the Palestine supporters when that was going on, that they would be those people that would be supporting Palestine with I Love Palestine shirts on, when Palestine is just as bad, if not worse, within that conflict. You had, I think, the Muslim Brotherhood basically running Palestine at the time. That doesn't mean that Israel, what they were doing was okay, neither. I mean, they're a government as well, and they were, bombing, supposedly killing innocent people. So, and, they have their story of what happened, but when it comes to governments, of course, it's all propaganda and it's all about making themselves look better in the situation. So, and in that montage there with Biden and Obama, again, that wasn't that long before we started hearing about ISIS. And that factors into things for me, too. It's like all of a sudden ISIS. You look at ISIS, it came out of fucking nowhere. And the thing I did like about the Harvard thing and what they talked about the U.S. and Russia, maybe the next, I think that was more of a joke, I hope, because that would be probably the end of the world. But is that the U.S., I mean, obviously everybody knows that, well, not everybody, but their military budget is ridiculous, and they spend more than what the next 8 countries combined. So this whole thing with ISIS and the I'm sorry, I kind of switched there because I forgot what I was going to say. With ISIS being, coming out of nowhere all of a sudden after Al-Qaeda is supposedly decimated, and, it just doesn't make any sense that they didn't know anything about some group called ISIS. They never had heard of them. They were never talked about in the media. They were never mentioned anywhere. And then all of a sudden, and then it's ISIL, then it's ISIS. And essentially they took Al-Qaeda, said, we got rid of them, and then kind of just changed their name, added some people. And I watched a documentary where, I've mentioned this before, that they were questioning one of the guys as to why he joined ISIS. Had nothing to do with, a caliphate or killing people or any of that. It was they paid more. So somebody was funding them too. I know they want to say that Turkey is really the one funding ISIS, which is part of NATO, and that the oil proceeds, that was one of the things that I had heard from government media. But somebody is funding them, obviously, U.S. government, and it's not just about some big religious, I don't know how many people have the same opinion of that guy who's basically like, well, I needed more money, and that's it. I mean, they're paying these people. So I never even thought of that. I thought they were just, they were fighting for their quote unquote cause, which, what is ISIS's cause? Because I'm still not clear. They want their own state, I guess, supposedly, the Islamic State, right? Because that's one that hasn't been said before. So I think it's a whole bunch of bullshit, and again, that it was created by the CIA. But the whole who's a bigger threat? I mean, ISIS is, and there was another clip there where they talked about ISIS and them being a threat or not being a threat in this case. And to say that this is the biggest issue, when what has ISIS even done that has to do with the United States? Nothing. And that we should all be scared. You have all of these candidates already, when they get into office, talking about what they're going to do, which is mostly things to take away people's freedoms. You have Trump saying he's going to build a wall. He's going to up the security state, more cameras, more police, more spying, more military. He's going to build the military so big that everyone's going to be so scared. And that is based off of what? Because they're attacking a couple countries in the Middle East. It's ridiculous. You have Cruz obviously coming out saying it's the most important issue, that he needs to, or that they need to, I guess as a whole, focus on that issue, make sure that they protect the American people. That's the biggest job of the president. You have Rubio and all the stuff that he's been saying about ISIS, and it's all of them pretty much talking about this group that hasn't done anything, and that is most likely backed by the American government anyway. So I think that's pretty much enough for tonight about ISIS. But you're going to continue to hear it in the campaigns, not campaigns, the debates, and in the campaigning as well. There's been commercials about it. I think even the Bush, whichever Bush is in there, that Jeb Bush did a commercial, about ISIS, will defeat ISIS. And you see how many people are scared and concerned. And that's the other thing too. It's we're afraid we need the government. The government loves to be wanted and have people rely on them and have people be afraid of things, so they're turning to the government. So that's really, it's crazy when you really think about it, because it's not something I really sat and thought about, the fact that, in watching this, I thought, of course, that the U.S. government runs ISIS, so they're not a threat. But the fact that ISIS hasn't even done anything to the U.S., and as I said, if they end up doing something, I think that's because that's what the U.S. government wanted. So the other thing I wanted to talk about really doesn't have a lot in general to do with anything that's currently going on, I guess. But the Free State Project recently in New Hampshire, who just had their primary yesterday, as we talked about, the winner being Trump and Bernie Sanders. The, what do they say? Something to burn. But New Hampshire, a lot of people are touting New Hampshire as the freest state in the country. And, of course, it has live free or die is its slogan. Now, I don't know, there's been a lot of talk about New Hampshire because of the primary. And you had Mark Levin, who I don't know what he would know about New Hampshire anyway, to be honest. But, he called it a liberal state. I think he did it again. He had done it last week, and then he said something about it today. And I think somebody else did too, that it's not like it used to be. It's a very liberal type state. And I'm thinking, well, never mind the Free State Project. What about, the gun laws? And, well, that's really, I'm trying to think of other things that people have told me. Of course, I'm hearing the free side from people that are part of the Free State Project and that are there for the freedom, but they're obviously experiencing more freedom. But they have just reached their 20,000 signers. I guess the Free State Project, for those who don't know, was, from what I understand, set up as to get 20,000 people to move to New Hampshire who believe in freedom and liberty. And I guess there was a definition that the most amount is of government you wanted is just to protect your property and yourself or something like that. So it's not a no government really thing. It's more of a, minarchist, but you can be an anarchist or just a libertarian or whatever. So for people who want freedom or want more freedom. So they finally reached 20,000 signers. Now we'll have to see, do those people move there? I mean, already supposedly there's 1,600 or between 1,600 and 2,000 that have already moved, that are early movers, because I guess once they hit the 20,000, that's supposed to trigger the move, and then they have 5 years to move. Now, it's not like there's anything that's going to force them to move or make them move there. Like, oh, if you don't move here, we're going to come down there with a gun and like we're going to kidnap you and move you to New Hampshire. So they, the other thing though that I heard, they were talking about the governor and how liberal she is and things like that. I'm trying to think of what show. You know what? It was Glenn Beck was talking about how liberal a state New Hampshire was. And some lady called in and was saying the same thing. But of course, these were conservatives that were talking about it. So you did have that. I forgot about that. And then I think you had somebody call in, Mark Levin, and kind of say the same stuff. So, even though I disagree with a lot of stuff that he does, and I think he's really fucked up in some of the shit that he says, seriously, but one point that Chris Cantwell had was that I guess the Free State Project there were more people that he would call them leftists, but more, I guess I'll use his word, more leftists moving there under the Free State Project. And with some of the people that I know, I do see some, not that I know well, just that I know of. Like the people that I actually talk to, I wouldn't put them in this category. But the people that I know who they are, they do seem sort of left-leaning. And then you have the left libertarians and left anarchists, and that is not something that I support, to be honest. I used to think as long as you don't want government, it's fine. And I guess it is fine as long as you're not pushing those ideas on somebody else and you're just doing your own thing. So if you want to move to your own community with a bunch of people and have your own little socialist community, as long as you're not pushing it on somebody else and people have the right to leave, then that's okay. But I did a show once where we talked about left libertarianism or left anarchism with somebody who really is just a fucking asshole, who I went out of my way to be really nice to, and I didn't do anything bad to them. And they posted a bunch of fucked up shit on Facebook, but whatever. Karma's a bitch, I guess. But some of the things that they were starting to say about co-ops, and it was almost like forced. It was like, oh, well, if you don't, everything's going to be co-ops. And I'm like, well, why would everything be co-ops? Because I look at things as, if some people want co-ops, that's fine. And if some people don't, then they don't. And maybe you have some co-ops. But it almost made it like the people would intimidate you or kind of force you, not via government, but via other ways. And and having everything be a co-op. It was a weird kind of conversation there. And that's when I started thinking more about the left anarchists and left libertarians. And so to kind of make things short, from what I understand, from what he was saying at least, and he says a lot of fucked up shit, so who knows, but I do see some of these people as well, but there's a lot of those types moving to New Hampshire. And I don't know what percentage of them there are, but that's what he was saying. But anyway, they met the 20,000 number, so we'll have to see how many out of that 20,000 actually moved, because people could assign their names, and then, you know, of course, things in their life happen. People change their minds. But 20,000 is a lot of people. So even if you get a certain percentage, you know, can you at least get, say, 5,000 to 8,000 people out of that 20? You know, you would think that you probably could, but who knows? So anyway, what they're trying to do, and I mean, I support what they're trying to do. They're trying to find a state that was small where they can essentially have a big impact there and make the state freer. You're never going to have freedom really anywhere with government as far as I'm concerned, but I think that there's levels of freedom. So I think that they can increase their level of freedom. Supposedly they have already. I mean, I don't know, because you get biased opinions. So most of the opinion that I've gotten has all come from Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live, that, oh, well, we have more of this and this and this. But you wouldn't really, you know, besides that, I don't know how you judge, and that's really just one opinion. Although there have been rankings of states and their freedoms, and New Hampshire is always up there in like the top 5. So that's something that you can definitely look at to judge. And they don't have any sales tax or state income tax neither. You know, those are some things as well. So right away, you can point to those things to say that, you know, it does have a certain amount of freedom. But at the same time, there's still a lot of people, it seems like, that are on the other side. But I think you're going to find that anywhere. But the more people that they get to move there, the more they're going to be able to change things. And they seem to be more about doing it through the system. And there's been talk about, you know, seceding and doing that through the system. And that's, you know, fine. I just personally, that might be something that might work in New Hampshire. I don't know. I just think, again, and it's hard for me to change my position on this, that without non-compliance, I think that's really the only way. I think that's what we've gotten to, unfortunately. But I'd like to see things succeed in New Hampshire. It is right near the state that I grew up in, the socialist state of Massachusetts. So, you know, who knows if things got that bad in Nevada, would I ever consider moving to New Hampshire? It'd be hard for me because I don't want to be anywhere near Massachusetts, but things, they'd have to get pretty bad in Nevada and be really good in New Hampshire. You know, it would have to be, the level of freedom in New Hampshire would have to be very high, and the level of freedom in Nevada would have to be very low. So what I do want to talk about, and not as a comparison, because I'm not trying to compare Nevada to New Hampshire. I think one of the things that's impossible to do is you can't really compare a city like Las Vegas to any part of New Hampshire because it's just too big. And the same with, you know, any other state with a big city. There's no city in New Hampshire, I think, that's big enough to compare to a city someplace else, because what I had heard is that Manchester was like 70-something thousand. Now, I may have that wrong, but that's barely a city. That's more like a town. So 70,000 for a city is pretty low. So it would be hard because the dynamics are so much different in a city. So it's like in Nevada, if you go to like Pahrump, which I think is 30,000, or you go to Sandy Valley, these are areas, the only areas I'm somewhat familiar with in Nevada, in southern Nevada. Of course, upstate Nevada, you have Reno, and in between, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of, they wouldn't be cities, but plenty of towns in the middle of nowhere that you could move to and not be bothered by anybody because it's just totally open desert. So I'm not looking to compare Nevada to New Hampshire. I'm just looking at the positives and the negatives of Las Vegas and the state of Nevada, and trying to look at things that we can improve upon. I mean, ultimately, what I would like to do, and I'm not going to start some movement, so, you know, don't worry about it. Not like anybody would listen to me anyway, but I would want to just start a town in the middle of the desert with people that love freedom, and, you know, make sure it's far enough away where you're not going to be that bothered. But I think at some point, of course, the police are going to come out there and they're not going to be too friendly or too happy, because, you know, if you started a community like that, it's, well, we're not paying any taxes, we're not doing any of this, that we're our own sovereign little town. And you think about it, why would the government be so much against something like that? And the reason why, of course, is because you start one of them, there's going to be a whole bunch of other ones popping up. And I think there are probably more people that believe in freedom that we're aware of. It's just they're too scared, or they just don't think it would make a difference. So they just live their normal government lives, and, you know, it is what it is. Because really, I mean, even with what I do, I mean, really what have I done is just pretty much out myself as somebody who doesn't believe in the U.S. government or anything they do. and put myself on the radar. Barely, I know, because there's still not that many people that know me. But we're trying to expand and get bigger, and made 22 cents off of YouTube so far. So, but yeah. So I mean, really, that's all I've done is I just put a target on my back. But at the same time, it's better being known, although I'm not that known, but just a little known, that I got stuff out there, you know, if I was persecuted and wasn't killed, I have enough to show that, okay, well, I'm obviously people are coming after me because of this. Now, the government would probably just support that anyway because they would be the ones coming after me. But in some situations, it's better to be somewhat known, even if it's just a little bit, than not known. And I think it's more, if anything's known, it would be the show, not me. But really what I'm doing is just, like I said, kind of just outing myself like, hey, I'm anti-government, come attack me or come, you know, harass me or whatever. And not that that's, you know, happened. That's one thing about being in a big city is I don't know any of the police and they don't know me. I remember one that arrested me because he was an MMA guy, and I know their names and all that stuff, and it's easy to look up and get that information. So, but I don't know them. In smaller towns like the town I grew up in, which was, I mean, it's probably 10 minutes from Boston, but it was still the police department for the town wasn't a huge police department. It was, well, I don't know how big, maybe 50, 100. Because the way it was set up was each town was surrounded by another town. So it was all, and it had, the town I lived in was the most heavily populated in that little area, like South suburban Boston or something. But anyway, it was part of the Boston metropolitan area. It was about 10 minutes from Boston. But yeah, I mean, the police knew people, and they probably certain police knew who I was. Here, being that there's like 2,000 something police officers in the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, I don't know that any of them know who I am. It all depends if they monitor the show or not. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Who knows? You know, they may monitor any show that is done that's considered anti-government in Las Vegas. They may not, because they may look at, well, the show's not big enough and it doesn't get enough attention, so we're not going to bother with it. I don't know. But again, I mean, really, as I had said, all I'm doing is kind of putting, you know, a target on my back. But at the same time, what I'm trying to do is, even if I only reach a couple people, is to introduce people to these ideas of freedom, to get people thinking, to get people just to let go and take off the paradigm, take off the rose-colored glasses, I guess they'd call them, and try to look at things objectively. A lot of people, it's hard for them with some of the things I say. It would depend on the show, because they'll get offended right away. If I say something about the military or the police or something like that, they can't help but just get offended. that they're not open-minded people. They're not people that could sit and actually listen to something. I don't know that I'm that type of person either, but I do sit and listen to shows that I hate. I don't know if I say I hate them, but I dislike them. But it's something I do for my show because it gives me more to talk about, and it gives me kind of ammunition to talk about the ridiculous things that they're accusing people of. Especially when I would listen to that show on Sirius, this Sirius Progressive channel. It was essentially where I think the country is going, and it is scary. It really is. But again, ideally, I would want to start a town in the desert with, a few thousand people, maybe more. I'm not the type of person that's used to being in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know how that would go over for me, because I've always lived in a city or right outside of a, major city. So it would be hard for me to probably move and live in the middle of the desert. Now, I guess if I wasn't that far from Las Vegas, maybe an hour or something, that might make a difference, but still. So that would be my, I guess, ideal situation, is to get a whole bunch of like-minded people and set up a community, and a community where we focused on agorism, which the government would call the black market, and set up our own businesses. And whether it's based on our own currency or gold or trade or whatever. Now, these are all things that the federal government would come after you for. But at the same time, if you set up your own community for the purpose of getting away from the system, then you'd want to get away from the system in all aspects. And that would include the currency and taxes and all of that. So I don't think that's something that's ever going to happen. I did look at houses in like Sandy Valley, which is, I think, about an hour and 20 minutes away. And they just have these big, huge lots out in the desert. I mean, I could buy a huge house for, basically nothing, but it's not something that my fiance wants to do, is to be that far away from Las Vegas, because I would still work there. So I'd be driving, in, as she would, an hour and 20 minutes or something to work. And, I'd still have to deal with that part of it. And it wouldn't really do that much, to be honest, except to get me out of the city in case something happens. But besides that, it's not like it would bring me to a free community or anything like that. But some of the positives that Las Vegas has regarding freedom, and again, no place is free. There's just levels of freedom. Now, of course, the one that it's known for is gambling. And I don't think you can really discount that. I mean, that's a huge thing that in most states in the country, actually every state when it comes to sports gambling, because I know in New Jersey that sports gambling is not legal. So any place else in the United States, if you bet on a game with a bookie, it's illegal. And this is the only place where it's not. I know they have those offshore betting places. I don't know exactly how that works, if it's legal for the place where it's at, like if it's in the Cayman Islands or something, and it's legal for the people that run it, but I don't know if it's illegal for you, or they would come after you. I know they shut a lot of those down because they were operating within the United States. Although I don't know how that would work, that they're operating within the United States, meaning that the internet operates within the United States, but it's not, all the servers are not within the United States. So I'm not too sure on the specific laws on that. But when it comes to gambling, that is a huge thing. The fact that the whole state, not part of a state where an Indian reservation is, or one little strip like Atlantic City, the whole state. And there's cool little places like Laughlin, which I look at as like a little strip. I don't know how many people listening have been to Laughlin, but the hotels are really cheap. It's a strip of casinos, maybe like 10 or 11. Behind them is, I forget what river, but there's a river behind them, and you can take like the river boat from one casino to another. It's, if you want like a cheap vacation, and to me, it's not even about being cheap. It's just nice, like a kind of a laid back experience, and they have clubs there and all that stuff as well. So it's not like it's ghetto or anything like that, or it's and when I say ghetto, I use the word ghetto as like cheap or whatever, but I mean it's a cool little place, and the hotels are cheap, and it's a place I love going to. I've been there a bunch of times. But there are more places than just Vegas. And, of course, you got Reno as well. The other thing, of course, is prostitution. And, again, that's a huge thing as well. Now, the reason why I think people don't give Nevada the credit for being a legalized, having legalized prostitution totally, is because Clark County does not. And I think that's fucked up that in this county you can get arrested for it, but over here Pahrump is about 45 minutes from Las Vegas. And so 45 minutes away, it's legal, but here it's not. You're going to put somebody in jail for it. It's just, it seems crazy. And the fact that I know the smaller the amount of people, the more, I guess, say you have, even though I don't believe you have any say anyway. But it would be better, I think, better served if that was a state law where, like with most of the gun laws now, especially with the new law on registration, it's at a state level where the counties cannot override the state. Now, if you're looking at it in terms of, well, we want to have a say in our county, that's understandable. And that's kind of where you're like, okay, well, in a county, it's smaller, you have more say, but they can also ban things. And that's the negative part. Like, they did have the whole state, you didn't have to register your handguns except for Clark County. But a state law was passed that said now you don't have to register your handguns. And you never had to register any long guns or anything like that. So that comes to another freedom in Nevada, that is right up there with any other state. I think there's only 2 other states that I say are more freer when it comes to guns, and that would be Vermont and Arizona. I'm not totally sure about Vermont, but in Las Vegas and the whole state of Nevada, because Nevada, as I was just saying, with prostitution, how it should be with guns, no county can pass a law that supersedes the state. So essentially, the only gun laws that are on the books in the state of Nevada is that you have to apply for a concealed carry permit. That's it. As opposed to, like in Arizona now, you can just conceal carry, and that's how it should be. But that would be the only difference between Arizona and Nevada, because there's no bans on anything. The only laws are the whatever federal laws there are on guns, of course, affect every state. So in Arizona, they're a bit freer when it comes to their gun laws just because of that one thing. And Vermont, I believe, is the same. That in Vermont, that you don't need a concealed carry permit either. But I don't know about in Vermont if they have any restrictions on anything else. Like if they have restrictions on magazine size or any certain type of guns or anything like that. I would assume that they don't. So those would be the 2 freest states when it comes to gun laws. Those are totally only under federal. So there's no state gun restrictions in Vermont and Arizona. And in Nevada, there's only that one concealed carry. You can open carry anything, a long gun or a handgun. You can buy any type of gun that's semi-automatic. The automatic, that has to do with the federal government. You have to file something that might take 6 months and whatnot, but there's no ban on any magazines or any type of guns, or so it's almost to the point where, you know, if they were to get rid of the concealed carry permit and you could just conceal carry, which I think they should do. Of course, I don't believe in any restrictions on guns, period. Then there would be no state laws against guns because, again, everything else would be on the federal level. So when it comes to guns, Nevada is up there with, you know, I don't know what other states, you know, like I said, you have Arizona, Vermont, and then Nevada, and then whatever other states are on the same level with Nevada because they're shall issue. So I think like New Hampshire, well, actually, no, because in Nevada now, this is one thing that I actually made a mistake on. So most places you can carry your gun loaded in your car. But there are some cities where you can't. So that would be the only other law. That, I think, should be the same thing where the state takes care of that, but they haven't. Because I was thinking of in New Hampshire, from what I understand, is that you have to unload your gun if it's in your car, unload your handgun. And the only other law, I forgot about this as well, is that you can't have any long guns loaded in your car. but you can have your handgun loaded, and you can pretty much have it like so it's accessible. Not on, you can't have it on your person, but if you have like a console, you can have your gun loaded in your console or in your glove compartment, or, you know, which is the whole point, because if someone's going to try to rob you or something like that, maybe you have a chance to grab your gun before they're able to do that, especially if they have like a knife or something. But that would be the only two laws, I guess, that you can't, and that might be a federal law, I don't know, but you can't have your long guns loaded in your car. And certain cities, you can't have your handgun loaded in your car. But it would be freer than New Hampshire on that level, because in New Hampshire, you can't have it loaded in your car. Maybe if you have a concealed carry permit, you can. But you don't, even if you don't have a concealed carry permit, you can have your gun loaded in your car in city limits of Las Vegas, all of Clark County except Boulder City and North Las Vegas. So that would be under those specific cities. Another thing that, and I don't know the specific laws, but just by looking and seeing where things are, zoning seems to be very liberal in at least Las Vegas and probably the rest of Nevada. And when I say liberal, I mean that like every neighborhood, you'll have a bar, and you'll have them in residential neighborhoods. So I'm sure certain places like Summerlin, which is the rich area of Las Vegas, where, you know, all the, I didn't want to say all the snobby people. I'm sure there's a lot of people that live in Summerlin that aren't snobby people, that are very nice people. But Summerlin is not a place I would want to live in. It's too uppity, I guess, for me. No offense to the Summerlin people. Plus, you know what's weird about Summerlin, which Summerlin is part of Las Vegas, just real briefly for the people who don't know, that the city of there's the city of Las Vegas, and then there's unincorporated Clark County. And technically, the Strip is not in Las Vegas. It's in Enterprise. So you have like Enterprise, Spring Valley. I've talked about this before, but in case you are a new listener or haven't heard me talk about this. And Summerlin is the same type of thing. It's unincorporated Clark County. So technically, it's Las Vegas, but they all have a name for the parts that are unincorporated Clark County. But yes, most people don't know that the Strip is technically not in Las Vegas. So that's something that's a little different about Las Vegas compared to other places that they have the unincorporated. I mean, maybe they have that in other places as well, but they do have unincorporated Clark County. But anyway, so Summerlin Summerlin wants to become its own town. They don't want to be part of Las Vegas, which I'm fine with. But the Clark County Commission won't allow it because I'm assuming the taxes that they get, all the property taxes that they would lose out on, because there's a lot of expensive houses there. So, but sorry, back to zoning laws. That's how I brought up Summerlin. That in Summerlin, it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems to be more residential neighborhoods as compared to every place else where, you know, there's businesses near residential neighborhoods, there's houses, which I think is how it should be. I don't think that the Clark County Commission, and that's how Clark County is set up. So Las Vegas is in Clark County. The Clark County Commission essentially runs Clark County, and Las Vegas also has its own city council, as does North Las Vegas and I think Boulder City, which are cities in the county. But I think that's how it should be. If you want to build a store somewhere, you shouldn't have to, if you buy the land, get permission from the Clark County Commission, because it's not set up for zoning that way. But it seems like at least the rest of Las Vegas, and hopefully this isn't going anywhere or changing, because I do see in Las Vegas, I see it going in the wrong direction. I definitely do. All the Clark County Commission members are Democrats, and that doesn't mean, I'm not a Republican, but I would like to see a kind of a mix, so you have, an equal amount. Because if they're all Democrats, you can have it where and this doesn't happen all the time, but where they all vote to approve something. If you got Republicans, maybe you got some people that might, stop them from voting on something. But I think it's pretty much controlled. And as I mentioned before, I think it's even getting to the point where it's controlled by the federal government. If you look at the budget, you see all of the grants that are coming from places or organizations, not organizations, what do you call it? Within the federal government, there things like HUD, and where they have all these grants because the federal government wants to control the zoning and the planning of the city. So that's kind of getting scary, where you see the federal government's involvement and all of their agencies. Sorry, it's getting late. Got up at 5:45. So all of their agencies are getting involved directly with the budget for the county. And I think Clark County is one of the biggest counties in the country, just because they just let it grow instead of creating, other counties. They just had all this land, one county, because it was all desert at one point. So the negatives, of course, that are, I was just trying to think of a word that I would consider anti-freedom. The police, of course, is a big issue, but I think you have that issue every place else. The Clark County Commission, as I mentioned, the involvement of the federal government. You have a fusion center here, which is, for people who haven't heard of fusion centers, they're anti-terrorist centers that take FBI, DHS, and local police and bring them all together. It's basically like a big task force of them. And that obviously, but these are things that are everywhere. We have two of them in the state. There's one in the Reno area as well. So there's other negatives also, but the biggest one, of course, being the police and all the things that they're able to get away with, and how they're going in a negative direction. Like recently, because of Zappos has a lot to do with this, which is a business downtown where now you cannot drink openly downtown if you have the original container or a glass bottle, from what I understand. So you have things like that going on that the Clark County Commission should not be getting involved in, especially when you're talking about tourist areas. You don't want to upset tourists over stupid shit, like you can't, have your original bottle or something like that. And I heard that they have that on the Strip now as well. I'm not sure because, one, I don't really drink anymore for the most part, and two, I rarely go to the Strip to hang out or walk around or anything like that. But that's about all the time we have for tonight. I did want to go into some other stuff, but unfortunately, the time is up, and I got to make sure that I do end the show on time and get to bed at a reasonable hour, which I have for the most part, but yeah, going past 10 kind of affects my sleep schedule. So I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Of course, I'm trying to find my end theme music. Go and check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And if you'd like to donate to the show, I don't, beg people to donate and like some other people do, or I don't sit there and you owe me money because I put all this time into my show. And no, none of that. If you'd like to donate, that's great. If not, that's fine too. Just keep in mind that the way it's set up right now, that you can only enter whole numbers. So you would just enter a 1 for $1, and that's the least amount you can enter, or 2 for $2, and so forth. So any donation, of course, is very much appreciated, even if it's just $1. But I don't expect anybody to, donate. You don't owe me any money just for listening to my show. And we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we will be talking about something that I'm not sure what I scheduled for tomorrow, but I'm sure it will be entertaining and fun. So join us tomorrow again, 7 Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. Thanks, everybody.
Police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.